Okay. Welcome to Wednesday Night Slides number 44. Glad y'all could join me here at the new bat time, same bat channel. The last several shows have been a little heavy on trains. This one's going to be a little bit lighter on trains. But there'll be some trains in here, but other stuff here as well. So we'll just jump right in and get started. And you all can see the title slide?
Yes, sir.
Yes, okay, very good. Over the past month, I've somehow managed to hang out a lot on the Atlantic coast, a lot of different activities on the coast. So the first part of the show is going to be pretty much all along the Atlantic coast from New Jersey up to Maine. And we're going to start off near Portland, Maine. Went up there for a Laro Photography Maine Harbors and Lighthouses tour with Pete Laro. And our first stop was at Portland Head Lighthouse. And from Portland Head, you can look out and you can see Rams Island Ledge, about a mile offshore. Our goal here was to get Portland Head with the rising moon. And there's the moon popping up behind the lighthouse. The park here is pretty stringent about throwing people out at sunset. We were hoping to get the moon coming up before they threw us out, and we did. Next morning, at about 4:30 in the morning, we were at Five Islands, Maine. This is a base for lobster boats. Now, of course, when you're doing lighthouses and Maine harbors, there are no motels nearby. US 1 really runs about 25 miles off the coast because of all the inlet streams, lakes, rivers on the coast itself. So if you've got a motel, you have to drive from wherever you were 20 miles up to US 1, find the motel, gets a little bit of sleep, get up the next morning, and of course, drive another 25 miles back down the coast to where we were going to start in the morning. So we just kind of crashed in the Five Islands parking lot overnight and slept there. Five Islands Lobster Company is usually open after Labor Day, but due to staffing shortages, we could not buy any lobster there this trip. Here's the sun coming up over the harbor. Lobster boats all out there. And we talked to a couple of the lobster guys there, and they said that not many folks are going out catching lobsters right now because the price is so depressed. There's a lobster boat heading out there beyond the lobster traps. I guess the dogs like Mountain Dew. Just some scenes there from the harbor as the sun came up. As always, I invite comments and questions during the show. If you have a comment or question, feel free to hit your space bar on your computer, ask your question, make your comment, and feel free to jump in at any time. We had the afternoon to kill, and since I had over 3 hours of sleep the previous night, I was feeling pretty good. So I went over to Old Orchard Beach and got one of Amtrak's Down Easters. These run from Boston through Portland on up to Brunswick, Maine. Here's a Boston-bound train going past the roller coaster at Old Orchard Beach. Then went down to Saco and got this Downeaster cab car. It looks like a locomotive. It's actually gutted. It's a cab car. Going past a Downeaster 20-year anniversary banner at the station. From there, we headed over to Kennebunkport and did some harbor scenes. Did not encounter George or Jeb while we were doing this. This is all in the Kennebunkport area. I lost my chat screen somehow. That night we went over to Portsmouth, New Hampshire, and from there we can look out and see Whaleback Lighthouse. And the goal here was to get the lighthouse with the moon rising behind it. Pete had a phone app that would show us exactly where the moon was going to come up in relation to the lighthouse. And we got there about an hour and a half, 2 hours before moonrise, because we figured there'd be a lot more photographers coming in to get the shot. Even they had to crawl out over some rocks to get to it. And sure enough, by the time the moon came up, there were about 25 photographers out there. But the app was absolutely dead on. The moon actually rose just over the jetty on the left side of the lighthouse, and we see it here as it's rising behind the lighthouse. This is actually with a bigger lens would have helped. This is actually with my 300 millimeter lens, and then I cropped in to give it like in Lightroom, give it like a equivalent of a 600 millimeter lens. But with Lightroom and the various tools available from Topaz, cropping in was not a problem. Stayed good and sharp. And there's the moon rising over Whaleback. From the same park, you can look across the harbor and see the Portsmouth Lighthouse. The lighthouse itself is on a military complex of some sort. You really can't get to it normally, but you can view it from this park here. The next morning, we were on a boat at 5:30 in the morning out of Kittery and headed out to Boone Island for moonset and then sunrise. Here we see the moon setting next to the Boone Island Lighthouse. And then here comes the sunrise. From there, we took our boat up to Isle of Shoals. Or it's actually down to Isle of Shoals. This lighthouse is in New Hampshire, technically. It's offshore. It's kind of interesting because it has a covered walkway from the lightkeeper's house over to the lighthouse itself. Then Pete had a surprise for us. He didn't tell us about this in advance, but we switched boats. We went in and hopped on a lobster boat and headed out with Captain John here. Pete gave him the pull down cap and the wool vest to make him look more like an old time lobsterman. But this guy normally does lobster demonstrations. This was a bit unusual because he had 6 people with cameras aimed at him the entire time while I gave his demonstration. But he told us all about lobster fishing, harvesting. For instance, there's only a certain size lobster you can keep. Too large or too small has to go back into the water. Any female with eggs goes back into the water. Anything with 1 claw goes back into the water. Lobster traps, the lobsters can actually come and go if they want to. They come in and they can munch on the bait bag and then walk right back out again if they want to. It's the unlucky ones that are feeding when the trap is pulled that get caught. It's also, there's a place, if you look at the cage itself there, the trap itself, with the orange netting, that's called the parlor. That they can't get out of. And usually they get pushed in there because other lobsters come in behind them to get to the bait bag. And when it gets crowded, they push each other out into the trap end, the parlor end, as opposed to the kitchen end of the trap. So here we are with two lobsters we caught. Now he has a demonstration license. There's three kinds of licenses in Maine. You can have the residential license, anybody can get that. The commercial license for harvesting commercially, and then a demonstration license. For the demonstration license, you can't keep any of the lobsters you catch. They go back in the water. And lobster fishing, harvesting is controlled by the state by the number of traps issued. Each license can have a certain number of traps. So here he is pulling one of the traps in and throwing a trap overboard. And once again, we went out to Whaleback Lighthouse to put that in the background for some of the shots. Now, normally when he's doing a lobster demonstration, he can focus entirely on the demonstration. But for us, and with all the cameras and everything, he had to also keep adjusting the boat to keep the Whaleback Lighthouse in the frame for some of our photos. So he had his hands full with us. There he's throwing the lobster with one claw back into the water. And back in goes the trap. That would be a keeper if he was actually a commercial harvester. And had it been cloudy, Pete also had one of the classic Gorton's fisherman type of floppy hats for him to wear. But being the sun was out, you wouldn't wear one of those floppy hats on a sunny day. You wear it when it's wet and damp and rainy. So he went with just the pull down wool hat. You see somebody's lens got into the picture in the lower right hand corner. I got to find a better frame for this. We'll do some editing. From there, I drove over to Brunswick. We had a little bit of free time. I drove over to Brunswick, got this shot of this mill that's been repurposed as a brew pub. Then from there down to Bailey Island, where this cool little building is sitting full of lobster buoys. Every lobsterman has his own color buoy, so you can tell which traps are his. And that's the harbor down at Bailey Island. Back to Five Islands, we were going to spend the evening here, but then Pete noticed that if we went over to Pemmican Point, which is merely an hour and 15 minutes away, we get there just in time for moonrise behind the lighthouse. So off we went to Pemmican Point, and there's the moon coming up behind the lighthouse. And that's the moon coming up there. The final day was supposed to be a Sunday morning shooting sunrise at Old Orchard Beach at the pier. Unfortunately, clouds had moved in. This was all the sunrise we got there. And that brought an end to the tour. However, sticking with our Atlantic Ocean theme, the following weekend, I went over to the Jersey Shore because New Jersey Transit was running its locomotive that is wrapped for the armed forces on the shuttles between Long Branch and Bayhead, New Jersey. Here we see the armed forces engine going through Belmar, New Jersey. Now, the way the Bayhead shuttles work, trains come south from Long Branch. They go through the loop at Bayhead. So if the engine's on the south end at coming down, it's on the north end going back. But at Long Branch, they change ends. So if the engine is on the north end at Long Branch, it stays on the north end and pushes the train back. Now, one of the shot of the armed forces unit pointing south, leading with the headlight on. So I had to wait for a couple of cycles for that to happen. Here we see the second train on the shuttles. There's two trains that handle them on weekends with a standard NJ Transit diesel. Here he is at Point Pleasant Beach. And the Armed Forces engine is pushing here, so the headlight isn't on. So I went for more of a broadside shot. He's coming up from Bay Head. Now, I knew that once he got to Long Branch, he would change ends and he would eventually come back south again, pointing the right direction with the headlight on. Here we see the second shuttle train. He's pushing away. This is at Point Pleasant also. Headlight out, the red markers on, because that's the back of the train heading north. But sure enough, here comes the Screaming Eagle, the Armed Forces engine. He's going past the signals that control traffic over the movable bridge at Point Pleasant. So I got the shot I set out for. It just took all day to do it. However, there are worse places to be on a not too hot summer afternoon than near the Jersey Shore. Sticking with the theme, I went down to Wildwood not once but twice over the past month to do some cleanup work on some neon signs I hadn't shot, plus other lights and things to go along with it. I'm branching out from being strictly neon now at Wildwood. This is the sign you pass going into town. We're going to start off with some daylight stuff here, and the two trips are kind of intermixed here. This is the classic Wildwoods beach ball display. The Wildwoods consist of 3 different towns: North Wildwood, Wildwood, and Wildwood Crest. We're in Wildwood itself here. Now, I was kind of surprised. This is the weekend after Labor Day. This is the weekend after Labor Day on a Sunday afternoon. I thought there would be a huge crowd here. Normally, there's a lot of people around the sign, but Labor Day, Wildwood becomes a ghost town. It just kind of shuts up. I picked up a couple of neon signs that don't light up at night. I had never shot the Sea Ray Motels sign before, mainly because I'm usually down there after dark and just never saw it. But I picked that up this past month. Here's the Suitcase Motel. It's not a neon sign, but it's interesting because when the Suitcase Motel was built in the 1960s, its sign was considered a little bit risque for the times. Unfortunately, it's gotten pretty beat up over the years, but back in the 1960s, this sign caused quite a commotion. The Chateau Blue was one of 2 motels in the Wildwoods that's on the National Register of Historic Places because it has the Jetsons 1960s DooWop architecture. The only neon on it, though, is the no vacancy sign. The VIP, that's only a daylight shot also, because the neon is pretty well shot on this, especially on the P. Not neon, but kind of cool. This is the little satellite thing on top of the Pan American Hotel. Les Boots, that's lost all of its neon. This was a neon sign at one time. No glass left up there at all anymore. The Blue Marlin, one of my favorites. It's nice, simple sign, cool font, cool outline of the Marlin. This is LED now, though. The neon on this is gone. This is one of my favorite neon signs in the Wildwoods. Ex-neon signs. The Grenada. 2 years ago, this was a neon sign. Last year, everything was gone. The frame, the letters, everything was gone. This year, it reappeared, but as a backlit plastic sign. The Imperial 500 and the Gold Crest. A pirate ship. And there's the Crusader off in the distance at sunset. And the Yankee Clipper. Once again, this is not neon. This is plastic. And now we're getting to some of the nighttime stuff, some of the non-motel stuff. There is a person in Wildwood who does neon, and a lot of the shops have adopted neon signs to go with the overall DooWop Wildwood theme. Romeo's famous pizzeria has neon, as opposed to Romeo's not famous pizzeria. The Crest Savings Bank has neon. The Chamber of Commerce has to have neon, of course. Here's the guy who does the neon. Got a little shop set up in Wildwood Crest. No, North Wildwood, sorry, North Wildwood. And inside of his store, he was closed when I was there. Inside his store, he's got various signs for sale. If you want to buy some neon, there's the place to go. Bagel Time Cafe. And this is looking through the window with the Hot Bagels neon sign reflected in a mirror inside the dining room. And leaving Wildwood, I went past Yuri's Waterfront Restaurant. Really, really nice sign here with the palm tree. Sticking with the non-hotel stuff, the Sand Jam, which is a bar, has neon. And then we're getting to the motels. The Imperial 500, really nice sign. And this year, everything worked. It's the first time I saw everything working on it. Really a sweet sign when it's all lit up. The Seagull has a little bit of neon out. The motel words, the letters for motel have white neon inside of them, and that was out. Otherwise, it was pretty well lit. Looking down the street from the Seagull, we see the Bel Air, which has been replaced with plastic. The Caribbean, which is all neon, that's just gorgeous. And then beyond that, the American Safari, which is a mixture of neon and plastic. There's a Seagull again. That's the whole motel. Architecturally, nothing spectacular, but it's got a neon sign. The Pink Champagne Motel. This sign here was also fully lit. With neon, it's you know, hit or miss. Sometimes there's pieces of it out. There's the whole Pink Champagne Motel. And that's classic Wildwood DooWop colors. This is one I didn't know existed until just recently, the Bonito Motel. It's not on the beach. It's a few blocks in. One side of its neon doesn't work at all. This side works, but it's obscured by trees. This is from the sidewalk. The Seaport Inn. This is not neon, obviously, but real nice backlit plastic. Really a sharp sign. The Aloha. Some of these motels have backlit lettering where the lights are on the wall behind solid letters. And the Aloha is one of the better examples of that. The Matador added a new neon sign. Their office sign, I had never noticed this before. Either it was out or it's new, one or the other. But I never shot their office sign before. That's neon. And of course, the Matador's rooftop sign is in great shape. The Condor, this one here was almost completely out 2 years ago. Now it's fully lit. The Ivanhoe, for some reason, had never shot this one before. This was a surprise to me, but I got that. And the Sand Dune. I think I had shot this before, but everything worked on it, so I shot it again. I had never seen this one before, the Isle of Palms. it's a sign that's way up high on top of a 3 or 4 story motel. And for some reason, I had never noticed it before. Either it was out or I just never looked up high enough. But that's really sweet. And here we are with one of the telephone pole palm trees in Wildwood, North Wildwood, on the poles. Wildwood has beach balls on the utility poles. Royal Court has palm trees and everything else, but it's a backlit plastic sign. And the Newport, same thing, plastic, but kind of cool. One thing that had not been open because of COVID, all my previous visits, was the DooWop Experience in Wildwood. The DooWop Experience is a 1960s museum. It's located in a former diner. It has like 1960s appliances, refrigerator, stove, dishwasher, sofas, space age type sofas, but also has some neon. It's neon garden out front. Most of the stuff doesn't light up. This is from the old Swan Motel, which was demolished, and the Satellite Motel also demolished, but they saved the sign. Unfortunately, none of the stuff lights up. A smaller sign from the Satellite is inside, and that does function. The White Star Motel is the only sign outside that even partially works. The neon is out, but the backlit top part of it still lights up on one side only. And there's lettering on all 4 sides. So it's inside, there's all kind of really, really, really cool neon. Some of it huge. I got the Satellite Motel sign there, the old Rio Motel. The A in the back, the red A is an old A from the Crusader. There's the Rio. That's the A from the Crusader. That A, I'm not sure where it came from. There was nothing there to identify which motel that came from. We need to dig that out. The Casbah. Rock the Casbah. Schumann's Restaurant. And a big sign from Zaber's, which was a pub down that way. Really, really popular in its day. Home of the Zaberized cocktail. Unfortunately, there's a post in the way. You can't shoot the entire sign. The Poplar Avenue Laundrette is another real nice large neon sign there below it. Groff's Restaurant. And an overall view of some of the stuff there. You see the bicycle hanging there. And there's a refrigerator down below the Blue A and other 1960s style stuff. The Shore Diner has American food. Groff's Restaurant. So that's it for the shore. Now we're going to go back to some trains. Oh, I'm waiting for trains. Here's some trains. We're going to go back to 1987 when Pennsylvania Railroad K4 1361 was restored. But before that, you do that, we're going to go to 1980. This is what the K4 looked like in 1980. It was on display up on Horseshoe Curve near Altoona, Pennsylvania. It was removed from the curve in 1985 and replaced by this diesel locomotive. And it went down to the Altoona shops, which were then owned by Conrail, where it was being restored. And on April 12th, 1987, they were ready to fire it up. So I went out to Altoona on April 12th. And unfortunately, it's way back there behind a chain link fence, and I can't get in. So I'm like trying to figure out how I'm going to get in and see this thing. I just started doing work for Tom Nemeth at Rail Pace. And Tom Nemeth and another guy who I've later come to know really well, I didn't know him at the time, Dan Cupper, they were walking inside the fence. And I'm like, Tom, I need to get in. How do I get in? And fortunately, Dan had the pool. Yeah, Tom's like, yeah, he's one of our contributors. And Dan said, okay, I'm going to go get somebody to get you in. So I got in. And they were working on the K4, getting it ready for its very first move. So here it is, ready to be ready to move in front of the Altoona car shop. And as they were doing this, I realized, you know what, this is going to be the first time in 30 some odd years the K4 has moved. So I put my camera on bulb and locked the shutter open and got this shot of the K4's very first move in 31 years. This time shot. They ran the engine backwards through the shop. There was a turntable back there, or a Y. Turned the engine around and brought it back out again and did some more work on it. Here it is, if it turning back out in front of the shop again. Then the only time I ever saw it run was weekend trips out of York, Pennsylvania in September of 1988. Like I said, it had been restored in April 1987. It ran some trips in the Altoona area, but the only time I saw it run was in York, Pennsylvania. It ran on the Maryland and Pennsylvania Railroad. Here it is coming down Pershing Avenue. It ran to Hanover Junction and also ran west of York. And of course, my note-taking is legendary. It doesn't exist. So a lot of these shots, I like desperately going back and trying to figure out where I was for a lot of them. Because like I've been over all the trackage that's near streets in York, trying to identify locations. Back to Pershing Avenue again. Here you see the crowd greeting the engine as it comes down Pershing Avenue. The trips originated in the yard, the Maryland and Pennsylvania, also known as the Ma and Pa. Originated in the Ma and Pa yard. So either going west or going south to Hanover Junction. It had to come down Pershing Avenue because the junction was just beyond here, where the line split. Here you see it traipsing through the traffic in York. Eventually, I'll figure out where the shot was taken. This, I'm pretty sure, is on the Northern Central, the line down to Hanover Junction. This is the bridge just north of Seven Valleys. Jim Boyd, the editor of Railfan at the time, he was there, and he put together this quick night photo of the K4. The Penzie diesel on the right, that was on the other end of the train because the K4 couldn't be turned on either of the two destinations it went to. And the Penzie diesel towed the entire train back to York. Unfortunately, the K4 didn't have a very long career. Shortly after these trips, it developed some major issues and was sidelined. So it ran for just about 2 years on this restoration. It has since undergone many mismanaged and poorly funded, and in some cases overfunded and just really badly managed restoration attempts. But finally, right now, as we speak, there are competent people who have control of the engine and are working to bring it back to service again. It is actually officially the state of Pennsylvania's official locomotive. For some reason, coming through parts of York, I guess with a lot of grade crossings, they had a flagman riding the pilot. Get off in front of the engine, flag the crossing, keep cars out of the way. On one trip, the photo line stretched out all the way across Pershing Avenue. Now, there's more of Pershing Avenue behind the photo line there. This is at an intersection, the street that goes off to the left. Anyhow, the cop came along, wanted to know why everybody was blocking the road. And this is back in 1988, so video was just getting started. So you look for the guy with the biggest camera, and that happened to be Mark Balkan of Mark One Video, who had a professional video camera back in those days. They were huge. And that's Mark with the purple hat, not the guy with the red shirt, but the purple hat to the left of the guy with the red shirt, behind the guy with the blue shirt. And Mark explained to him what was going on, why we were there, why we were blocking the road. The cop actually said, "Oh, okay, carry on." So here's the photo line getting the 1361 coming down Persian Avenue. I had a Ford Econoline van at the time with a roof ladder. So I had parked just down Persian Avenue, and in the next block, climbed up on the roof to get this shot here. And that is going to bring an end to tonight's program. That's all I got. Hang on one second. The next show is going to be sometime next month. I'm not sure when yet. It won't be the second Wednesday, possibly the third Wednesday. So with that, I am going to close this for the YouTubers. I'm going to stop the share.